The broken promise, the crystal wineglass, slipped from Victoria Sterling's trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor of their penthouse kitchen. The sound echoed through the silence like a gunshot, but it was nothing compared to the words that had just shattered her world. "I want a divorce, Victoria." Marcus Wellington stood across from her, his steel-gray eyes cold and distant. The man who had once promised her forever now looked at her like she was a stranger. His perfectly tailored suit was wrinkled, his usually pristine appearance disheveled, and Victoria noticed lipstick stains on his collar that weren't her shade. "What?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper, her legs suddenly weak. "You heard me?" "Ah!" Marcus loosened his tie, avoiding her gaze. "I've been seeing someone else. Celeste and I. We're in love." Victoria gripped the kitchen counter, her knuckles white. Celeste Blackwood. The name hit her like a physical blow. The young, ambitious lawyer who had joined Marcus's tech empire 6 months ago. The woman Victoria had welcomed into their social circle, had invited 2 dinner parties, had trusted. How long? The words scraped her throat raw. Does it matter? Marcus finally looked at her, and Victoria saw no trace of the man who had once written her love letters, who had proposed on a beach in Santorini, who had promised her that she was his everything. "It matters to me." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not yet," Marcus sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. 8 months. 8 months. Victoria felt the ground shift beneath her feet. 8 months of lies, of pretending. Of him coming home late with excuses about board meetings and business trips. 8 months of her planning their 10th anniversary party, looking at vacation homes in Tuscany, of believing in a future that had already been destroyed. "I trusted you," she whispered. "Victoria, please don't make this harder than it has to be." Marcus's voice held a note of impatience that made her stomach turn. "You'll be well taken care of. The prenup ensures that, and I'll be generous with the settlement." The prenup. The document she had signed 10 years ago when she was young and naive, and so desperately in love that she would have signed anything, Marcus asked. The same document that now meant she would walk away from their marriage with a fraction of what they had built together. "I gave you everything," Victoria said, her voice gaining strength. "I gave up my career, my dreams, my independence. I became the perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the perfect accessory for your success." "And I'm grateful for that," Marcus replied, but his tone suggested otherwise. "But people change, Victoria. I've changed. My needs have changed." "Your needs?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "You mean you needed someone younger? Someone who could advance your career connections? Someone who hadn't sacrificed everything for?" "You." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Celeste understands my world in a way you never could. She's ambitious, driven, intellectual. She challenges me." Each word was a knife to Victoria's heart. She had been 22 when they married, fresh out of college with dreams of becoming a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But Marcus had needed a wife who could entertain his clients, who could smile and charm at his business dinners, who could be his perfect companion. She had molded herself into exactly what he wanted, and now he was discarding her for someone who hadn't made those sacrifices. "Get out," Victoria said quietly. "Victoria, get out." Her voice echoed through the penthouse, surprising them both. With its force, go to your ambitious, intellectual girlfriend. Go build your new life. But get out of mine. Marcus hesitated for a moment, and Victoria thought she saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Regret, perhaps, or uncertainty. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold determination of a man who had made his choice. "My lawyer will be in touch," he said, straightening his tie. "I'll have someone come for my things tomorrow." Victoria stood frozen as she listened to his footsteps across the marble floor, the sound of the front door closing with finality. Only then did she allow herself to sink to the floor, her body shaking with silent sobs. The woman who had been Victoria Wellington was gone, destroyed as completely as the wine glass at her feet. But in that moment of absolute devastation, something else began to stir. Spark of anger, of determination, of a strength she had forgotten she possessed. She would not let Marcus Wellington destroy her. She would rebuild herself stronger and better than before. and someday, somehow, she would make him realize exactly what he had thrown away. The broken glass caught the light from the chandelier above, each shard gleaming like a diamond. Victoria stared at the fragments, seeing her own reflection multiplied and distorted. By the time she stood up, brushing the glass away, the transformation had already begun. 2 years had passed since that devastating night. Victoria Sterling stood in her newly renovated office overlooking Central Park. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden light across the elegant space she had designed herself. Gone was the broken woman who had collapsed on her kitchen floor. In her place stood a confident entrepreneur who had built something extraordinary from nothing. Sterling Events has officially booked the Rothschild wedding, Natalie Cross announced, bursting through the office doors with a champagne bottle in hand. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and her emerald eyes sparkled with excitement. "Victoria, do you realize what this means? We're officially in the top tier of luxury event planners in the city." Victoria turned from the window, a genuine smile spreading across her face. The past 2 years had been the most challenging of her life, but also the most rewarding. After the divorce settlement, which had been far less generous than Marcus had promised, she had been forced to start over completely. "I can't believe it," Victoria said, accepting the champagne flute Natalie offered. "When I first met James Morrison at that coffee shop, I never imagined we'd come this far." Memory was still vivid. 3 months after her divorce, Victoria had been sitting alone in a small cafe, nursing her 3rd cup of coffee while scouring job listings on her laptop. She had been desperate, her savings dwindling, her confidence shattered. James Morrison, a distinguished man in his 50s with kind eyes and graying temples, had approached her table. "Excuse me," he had said, "but I couldn't help but notice you're looking at event planning positions." "I'm James Morrison, and I run a boutique consulting firm. Are you looking for work?" James had become more than just a mentor. He had become the father figure Victoria had never had. He had seen potential in her that she couldn't see in herself. Recognizing the sophisticated taste and natural elegance that years of being Marcus's wife had cultivated, adored his guidance, Victoria had learned the business side of event planning, the financial aspects, the networking requirements. "You have something special," James had told her during one of their early meetings. "You understand luxury, you know how to move in elite circles, and you have an eye for detail that can't be taught. But more importantly, you have the hunger of someone who has everything to prove." He had been right. Victoria had thrown herself into building her business with a determination that surprised even her. She had started small, planning intimate dinner parties for James's contacts, gradually building a reputation for creating unforgettable experiences. Her events weren't just parties. They were immersive experiences that left guests talking for months. "Remember our first real client?" Natalie asked, settling into the plush velvet chair across from Victoria's desk. Victoria laughed, remembering the elderly socialite who had hired them to plan a fundraiser. "For her animal rescue foundation? I was so nervous I barely slept for a week. But when she saw the enchanted garden theme we created," she cried, Natalie finished. Actual tears of joy. "And then she recommended us to everyone in her social circle." That had been the turning point. Word of mouth in New York's elite circles was everything, and Victoria had quickly learned how to leverage her connections from her marriage to Marcus.
Ironically,
The very social skills he had once dismissed as superficial had become the foundation of her success. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and felt her heart skip a beat. It was from Theodore Blackstone, the reclusive billionaire who had been courting her services for months. "What is it?" Natalie asked, noticing Victoria's expression. "Theodore Blackstone wants to meet tomorrow. He's finally ready to discuss the charity gala he's been planning." Natalie's eyes widened. Theodore Blackstone was legendary in New York, a self-made billionaire who had built his fortune in sustainable technology. He was known for his philanthropy, his mysterious personal life, and his impossibly high standards. Landing him as a client would cement Sterling Events' reputation as the premier luxury event planning company in the city. "Victoria, this is huge," Natalie said. "You know what kind of budget he's probably working with?" Victoria nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead to the challenges. Theodore Blackstone didn't just want an event. He wanted perfection. He wanted something that would make headlines, something that would set a new standard for charitable fundraising events. I've been researching him for months, Victoria said, pulling out a thick folder from her desk. He's particular about every detail, has strong opinions about sustainability and social responsibility, and he's never worked with an event planner before. This would be his first major public gala. So no pressure, Natalie said with a grin. Victoria stood and walked to the window again, looking out at the city that had once seemed so intimidating. Now it felt like her domain, a place where she had earned her success through hard work and determination. She thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago, broken, dependent, lost. That woman felt like a stranger now. Her reflection in the window showed someone completely transformed. Her blonde hair was now cut in a chic bob that framed her face perfectly. Her wardrobe had evolved from the conservative dresses Marcus had preferred to bold, modern pieces that reflected her personality. She had discovered a love for deep jewel tones, for textures and fabrics that felt luxurious against her skin. Oh yeah. Know what the best part is? Victoria said, turning back to Natalie. I built this, not because someone wanted me to, not to support someone else's dreams, but because I wanted to, because I could. Natalie raised her champagne flute. To Victoria Sterling, who rose from the ashes and built an empire. Victoria clinked her glass against Natalie's, feeling a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the champagne. To new beginnings. As they sipped their champagne, Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and felt her stomach drop. It was a number she recognized but hadn't seen in months. Marcus's assistant. Aren't you going to answer it? Natalie asked. Victoria looked at the phone, then at her reflection in the window, then at the thriving business she had built. She smiled and declined the call. Some calls aren't worth answering, she said. Besides, I have a meeting with Theodore Blackstone to prepare for. But as she turned back to her desk, Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that her past was about to collide with her present in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Theodore Blackstone's penthouse office occupied the entire top floor of the Blackstone Tower, offering a breathtaking view of Manhattan's skyline. Victoria had arrived precisely on time, her navy blue power suit perfectly tailored, her confidence radiating from every step. She had prepared extensively for this meeting, knowing that landing Theodore as a client would elevate Sterling events to unprecedented heights. Ms. Sterling, Theodore's voice was deep and warm as he rose from behind his mahogany desk. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps early 40s, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see everything. His presence filled the room with an energy that made Victoria's pulse quicken. Mr. Blackstone, she replied, extending her hand. When their fingers touched, she felt an unexpected jolt of electricity that she quickly dismissed as professional excitement. Please, call me Theodore. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that surprised her. I've been following your work, and I must say, your reputation precedes you. Victoria took the offered seat across from his desk, crossing her legs elegantly. Thank you. I understand you're planning a charity gala. It's the Blackstone Foundation's annual fundraiser, Theodore confirmed, settling back into his chair. But this year, I want to do something extraordinary, something that will not only raise significant funds, but also make a statement about the causes we support. For the next hour, they discussed details. Theodore's vision was ambitious, a gala that would bring together the city's most influential figures to support environmental conservation and education initiatives. He spoke passionately about his foundation's work, and Victoria found herself drawn not just to the project but to the man himself. I have one condition, Theodore said as their meeting drew to a close. I want complete creative control to rest with you. I've seen what you can accomplish when given free rein. This event needs to be perfect, and I believe you're the only person who can deliver that. Victoria felt a flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. I'm honored by your confidence, but I have to ask, have you considered the guest list? An event of this magnitude will attract significant media attention. Theodore leaned forward, his eyes intense. That's exactly what I'm counting on. I want every major player in the city there. Tech executives, politicians, society figures, celebrities. I want this to be the event of the year. You're comfortable with the potential for drama? Victoria asked carefully. Theodore's smile was enigmatic. Miss Sterling, I've learned that the most memorable events are often the ones where unexpected things happen. I trust you to handle whatever arises. As Victoria left the meeting, her mind was already racing with possibilities. The budget Theodore had outlined was essentially unlimited, and his trust in her creative vision was both thrilling and terrifying. She spent the rest of the day in her office, sketching ideas and making preliminary calls to vendors. It was late. Evening when Natalie knocked on her door, holding a steaming cup of coffee and a concerned expression. "You've been in here for 8 hours," Natalie said, settling into the chair across from Victoria's desk. "How did the meeting go?" "Better than I could have hoped," Victoria replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Theodore Blackstone is extraordinary. The budget is unlimited, the vision is ambitious, and he's giving me complete creative control. That's fantastic." Natalie's excitement was infectious.
So why do you look worried?
It's not worry exactly, it's just there's something about him. He's not what I expected. He's younger, more charismatic, and when he looks at me, I feel like he sees more than just an event planner. Victoria Sterling, are you telling me you're attracted to a client? I'm telling you that I felt something I haven't felt in years, Victoria admitted. But that's not the point. The point is that this event will be massive, and with a guest list that includes every major figure in New York, there's a chance that Marcus and Celeste will be there. Natalie's expression sobered. Are you ready for that? Victoria considered the question. 2 years ago, the thought of seeing Marcus again would have sent her into a panic. But now, sitting in her successful business surrounded by evidence of everything she had built, she felt different. "I think I am," she said finally. "Actually, I think I want them to see what I've become." 3 days later, Victoria was in her office reviewing catering options when her assistant buzzed her intercom. "Miss Sterling, there's a Celeste Wellington here to see you," she says. "It's urgent." Victoria's blood ran cold. Celeste Wellington. Marcus's wife had taken his name, something Victoria had never done during their marriage. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Send her in," Victoria said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Celeste entered the office with the confidence of someone who had never been denied anything. She was beautiful in a sharp, calculated way blonde hair pulled back in a severe chignon, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. But Victoria noticed the tension around her eyes, the way her manicured fingers gripped her purse. "Victoria," Celeste said, her voice artificially sweet. "How wonderful to see you again. You look different." Celeste. Victoria didn't rise from her desk, maintaining the power position. "What can I do for you?" "I understand you're planning the Blackstone Foundation Gala," Celeste said, taking the seat across from Victoria without being invited. "Marcus and I received our invitation yesterday." Victoria's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression neutral. "Congratulations. It should be a lovely event." "I'm sure it will be," Celeste replied, her smile sharp. "I wanted to speak with you personally to ensure there wouldn't be any awkwardness. I know this might be difficult for you, seeing Marcus and me together, especially at an event you're planning." The condescension in Celeste's tone was unmistakable, and Victoria felt her old anger flare. But she had learned to channel that anger into something more productive. "I appreciate your concern," Victoria said coolly. "I can assure you that my only focus will be ensuring the event's success. My personal feelings have no place in my professional life. Celeste's smile faltered slightly. Of course. Just thought. Well, Marcus mentioned that you might find it challenging. Marcus mentioned me? Victoria couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Oh, just in passing, Celeste said quickly, but Victoria caught something in her tone. He's been quite successful lately. His company just went public. The IPO was very lucrative. Victoria felt a stab of something, not jealousy, but a complex mix of emotions she couldn't quite identify. She had once been part of Marcus's world, had supported his dreams, and now she was hearing about his success from his new wife. I'm happy for him, Victoria said, and was surprised to find she meant it. Celeste stood, smoothing her skirt. Oh, I should let you get back to your work. I'm sure you have a lot of arrangements to make. After Celeste left, Victoria sat alone in her office, staring out at the city lights. She thought about the woman she had been, Marcus's wife, defined by her relationship to him. Then she thought about the woman she had become, successful, independent, strong. Her phone buzzed with a text from Theodore. Looking forward to seeing your vision come to life. This gala will be unforgettable. Victoria smiled, typing back. It certainly will be. As she prepared to leave the office, Victoria caught her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her was poised, confident, and ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She had built something extraordinary from the ashes of her old life. And she wasn't about to let anyone, not Marcus, not Celeste, not anyone, diminish what she had accomplished. The gala was 3 weeks away. And Victoria had the distinct feeling that it would be a night that would change everything. She just didn't know how right she was. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel had been transformed into an enchanted underwater paradise. Cascading silk drapes in deep blues and greens created the illusion of ocean waves, while thousands of LED lights twinkled like bioluminescent creatures. In the depths, crystal chandeliers had been replaced with stunning jellyfish-inspired installations that cast ethereal shadows across the room. Victoria had outdone herself, creating an immersive experience that left guests breathless as they entered. Standing at the edge of the ballroom, Victoria surveyed her masterpiece with satisfaction. Her midnight blue gown hugged her curves perfectly, the silk fabric catching the light as she moved. The dress was daring, a plunging neckline that showed her confidence, high slit that revealed her toned legs, and an open back that made her feel powerful and feminine simultaneously. You've created something extraordinary. Theodore's voice came from behind her, warm and appreciative. He placed a gentle hand on her bare shoulder, and Victoria felt that familiar spark of electricity. She turned to face him, her breath catching at how handsome he looked in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. Thank you. I wanted to create something that would make people feel transformed, even if just for one evening. Like you've been transformed, Theodore asked, his blue eyes intense as they searched her face. Before Victoria could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught her attention. Marcus Wellington had arrived, and with him was Celeste, resplendent in a white gown that seemed calculated to make her look like a bride. But Victoria's attention was immediately drawn to the tension between them, the way Celeste's smile seemed forced, how Marcus's jaw was tight with barely contained frustration. Excuse me, Victoria murmured to Theodore, her professional instincts kicking in. She needed to ensure nothing would disrupt her carefully orchestrated evening. As she approached the entrance, Victoria caught fragments of a heated, whispered conversation between Marcus and Celeste. Double quotes, ... told you this was a mistake, Celeste was saying, her voice strained. We committed to being here, Marcus replied tersely. The foundation is important to the company's image. It's not about the foundation, and you know it, Celeste snapped. It's about her. Victoria paused, realizing they were talking about her. Marcus's gaze swept the room until it landed on her, and she saw something flicker across his face, surprise, admiration, and something deeper that made her stomach tighten. Victoria, Marcus said as she approached, his voice carefully neutral. Congratulations. This is ... incredible. Thank you, Victoria replied, her tone professional but warm. I'm glad you could make it. She noticed how Marcus's eyes lingered on her dress, on the confident way she carried herself. The woman he had divorced bore little resemblance to the woman standing before him now. You look stunning, Marcus said, and Celeste's grip on his arm tightened visibly. Celeste's voice held a warning note, but Marcus seemed unable to look away from Victoria. I had no idea you were. I mean, I heard you were doing well, but this, I guess, is what happens when someone discovers their true potential, Victoria. Finished, her voice steady. If you'll excuse me, I need to check on the catering. As she walked away, Victoria felt a surge of pride. She had faced Marcus without flinching, without the old pain overwhelming her. But she also couldn't ignore the way he had looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. The evening progressed beautifully. Guests mingled, champagne flowed, and the charity auction was exceeding all expectations. Victoria moved through the crowd with ease, ensuring every detail was perfect. She was in her element. Commanding respect and admiration from New York's elite, it was during the silent auction that everything changed. Victoria was adjusting a display when she heard Celeste's voice, sharp with anger, coming from the alcove. Behind the auction tables, don't you dare lie to me, Marcus. I saw how you looked at her. I see how you've been looking at her all evening. Celeste, you're being ridiculous, Marcus replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Just like I was being ridiculous when I found that phone number in your jacket pocket, and I caught you texting someone at midnight, and you started working late again, just like you did when you were cheating on Victoria?
Ow.
Victoria froze, her blood running cold. Marcus was cheating on Celeste. The irony was staggering, but she found herself feeling no satisfaction. Only a strange sadness for the woman who had once been her betrayer. That's different, Marcus said weakly. Different. How, because this time you're cheating on me instead of with me? Victoria was about to move away when she heard another voice, sultry and familiar. Marcus, darling, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Victoria peered around the corner and saw a stunning young woman with raven black hair and emerald eyes, wearing a scandalous red dress that left little to the imagination. She couldn't have been more than 25, and she was looking at Marcus with the same possessive hunger that Celeste had once shown. Scarlet, Marcus said, his voice strained. You shouldn't be here. But I am here, Scarlet Rose replied, her voice carrying clearly across the alcove. And I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of being your secret. Celeste's face went white. Who is this? I'm Scarlet Rose, the young woman said with a smile that was all teeth. And I'm the woman Marcus loves. The woman he's been seeing for the past 6 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria watched as Celeste's carefully constructed world crumbled before her eyes, just as Victoria's had years before. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. 6 months, Celeste whispered, her voice breaking. Marcus, tell me she's lying. Marcus looked between the two women, his face a mask of guilt and resignation. Celeste, I can explain. Explain what? Celeste's voice rose, no longer caring who might hear. Explain how you're doing to me exactly what you did to Victoria. Explain how you're a pathetic serial cheater who can't commit to anyone. Hey, Scarlet interjected, her voice sharp. Don't take your anger out on Marcus, because you weren't enough for him. Some of us know how to keep a man interested. The slap echoed through the alcove as Celeste's hand connected with Scarlet's cheek. The younger woman staggered back, her hand flying to her face in shock. You little homewrecker, Celeste snarled. Do you have any idea what you've destroyed? Destroyed nothing, Scarlet shot back, her eyes blazing. Your marriage was already over. Marcus told me so himself. Marcus told you what he needed to tell you to get you into bed, Celeste replied, her voice cold as ice. Just like he told me what I needed to hear to break up his first marriage. You're nothing special, sweetheart. You're just the latest in a long line of women who think they can tame Marcus Wellington. Victoria had heard enough. She stepped back, her mind reeling from what she had witnessed. The man who had destroyed her life, who had made her feel inadequate and worthless, was repeating the same pattern with mechanical precision. Celeste, who had once been the other woman, was now the discarded wife. And Scarlet, young and naive, was walking the same path Victoria had once traveled. As she walked away from the drama unfolding in the alcove, Victoria felt a strange sense of closure. She had been vindicated in a way she'd never expected, but more importantly, she realized that Marcus's betrayal had been a gift. It had forced her to discover her own strength, her own worth, her own power. "Is everything all right?" Theodore's concerned voice made her turn. He was standing behind her, his face etched with worry. "Everything is perfect," Victoria said, and meant it. Absolutely perfect. Behind them, the sounds of the confrontation were growing louder, but Victoria didn't look back. She had spent too many years looking backward. Tonight, she was finally ready to look forward. "Dance with me," Theodore said, extending his hand. Victoria smiled, placing her hand in his. "I'd love to." As they moved on to the dance floor, Victoria felt Marcus's eyes on her from across the room. But for the first time in years, his gaze held no power over her. She was free, successful, and in the arms of a man who saw her worth. The evening was far from over, but Victoria already knew it would be unforgettable. The music swelled around them as Theodore led Victoria across the dance floor, their movements perfectly synchronized. The underwater paradise she had created seemed to pulse with life around them, the LED lights casting magical patterns across the silk drapes. For the first time in years, Victoria felt completely at peace, her body fitting perfectly against Theodore's as they moved to the rhythm. "You're extraordinary," Theodore murmured against her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "Not just tonight, but every day. It's the way you've built your life, your strength, your grace. It's breathtaking." Victoria pulled back to look into his eyes, seeing something there that made her heart skip. "Theodore, may I cut in?" Marcus's voice shattered the moment like glass, stood beside them, his face haggard, his usual composure completely gone. His bow tie was askew, his hair disheveled, and there were traces of tears on his cheeks. Theodore's arms tightened protectively around Victoria. "I believe the lady is occupied." "Please," Marcus said, his voice desperate. "Victoria, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." Victoria looked at him, really looked at him. Man saw a broken man, the powerful, confident Marcus Wellington. She had once known was gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and desperate. She felt Theodore's questioning gaze and squeezed his hand gently. "It's all right," she said softly. 5 minutes?" Theodore nodded reluctantly, but not before brushing a gentle kiss across her knuckles. "I'll be at the bar when you're ready." As Theodore walked away, Victoria noticed how every eye in the room was on them. The drama that had unfolded earlier was now the talk of the evening, and she could see Celeste across the room, her white gown stained with tears, being comforted by several society matrons. "Victoria," Marcus began, his voice shaking, "I've made the biggest mistake of my life, multiple mistakes. But the biggest one was letting you go." "Marcus, no. Please, let me say this." He ran a hand through his hair, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. "Watching you tonight, seeing what you've become, what you've built, I realize I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me." Victoria felt a flicker of the old pain, but it was distant now, like an echo of something that had once hurt, but no longer held power over her. "You're upset because of what happened with Celeste and Scarlett." "This isn't about me. It's about you," Marcus insisted. "It's always been about you. Every woman since has been a poor substitute for what I lost. Celeste, Scarlett, all of them, they were just me trying to fill a void that only you could fill." "That's not love, Marcus," Victoria said quietly. "That's possession. That's ego. You don't miss me. You miss the idea of me, the version of me that existed only to support your dreams." "That's not true." "It is true." Victoria's voice was steady, filled with a certainty that surprised even her. "You miss the woman who gave up her career for you, who molded herself into what you wanted, who never challenged you or demanded more than you were willing to give. But that woman is gone, Marcus. She died the night you asked for a divorce." Marcus's face crumpled. "I know I hurt you. I know I was selfish and cruel. But I've changed. I can be better. We can be better." "We can't," Victoria said, and the finality in her voice made him flinch. "Because you haven't changed. You're still the same man who cheated on me, who cheated on Celeste, who will probably cheat on Scarlett. You're still the man who only wants something when he can't have it." Across the room, Victoria saw Theodore watching them, his expression carefully neutral, but his posture tense. She realized that this conversation wasn't just about her past, it was about her future. And she knew exactly what she wanted that future to look like. "I forgive you," Victoria said, and Marcus's head snapped up with hope. "I forgive you for the betrayal, for the lies, for breaking my heart. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means I'm finally free of the anger and pain you caused me." "Victoria, please, I'm happy, Marcus," she said, and the truth of it rang in her voice. "I'm successful, independent, and I'm falling in love with a man who sees my worth. You gave me the greatest gift you could have given me when you left. You gave me the chance to discover who I really am." Marcus's shoulders sagged in defeat. "So that's it? We're nothing to each other?" "We're nothing to each other, Victoria." "Confirmed. But I'm grateful for what we had because it led me to where I am now." As she turned to walk away, Marcus grabbed her arm desperately. "Victoria, I love you. I've always loved you." Victoria looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. "No, Marcus. You loved the idea of me. You loved having me. You never loved me enough to choose me over someone else." She gently removed his hand from her arm. "Goodbye, Marcus. I hope you find whatever it is you're really looking for." As Victoria walked away, she heard Marcus call her name one last time, but she didn't turn back. She had spent too many years looking backward, and tonight was about moving forward. Theodore was waiting at the bar, just as he had promised. When he saw her approaching, his face lit up with relief and something deeper, something that made Victoria's heart flutter with possibility. "Everything all right?" he asked, handing her a glass of champagne. "Everything is perfect," Victoria said, accepting the glass and stepping closer to him. "Absolutely perfect." Theodore's eyes searched her face. "And what happens now?" Victoria smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Now we dance. Now we celebrate. Now we see what the future holds. And Marcus." "Marcus is my past," Victoria said firmly. "You're my present. And if you want to be, you're my future." Theodore's smile was radiant as he set down their champagne glasses and pulled her into his arms. "I can't think of anything I want more." As they kissed, Victoria felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. The broken woman who had once defined herself by her marriage to Marcus Wellington was truly gone. In her place stood Victoria Sterling, successful, independent, and deeply in love with a man who saw her for exactly who she was. The gala continued around them. But Victoria was no longer the event planner, ensuring every detail was perfect. She was simply a woman in love, dancing with the man who had helped her realize that her greatest victory wasn't revenge against those who had hurt. Her hit was the life she had built for herself. Across the room, she could see Celeste leaving, with her head held high, having discovered the strength that comes from finally seeing the truth. Scarlett was nowhere to be seen, presumably having fled when the reality of her situation became clear. And Marcus stood alone near the entrance, watching Victoria with the expression of a man who had finally realized what he had lost. But Victoria no longer cared about Marcus's regrets. She had found something far more valuable than revenge. She had found herself, as Theodore spun her around the dance floor. Victoria laughed with pure joy. The woman who had once been broken by betrayal had become stronger than she ever imagined possible. She had built an empire from nothing, commanded respect from New York's elite, and found love with a man who cherished her independence rather than trying to diminish it. The night was young. The music was perfect, and Victoria Sterling was exactly where she belonged, in the arms of a man who loved her for who she was, not who she had been forced to become. Her transformation was complete, her victory absolute, and her future bright with infinite possibilities. "Ready for the next adventure?" Theodore whispered in her ear. Victoria smiled, her heart full of hope and love. "With you, I'm ready for anything." And as they danced beneath the shimmering lights of her underwater paradise, Victoria knew that the best chapters of her story were just beginning.